think back of my days of being in the classroom, there's some things I wish I had known. And one of the things I wish I had known is the whole concept of Kounin's dimension of teacher classroom management style. So let me tell you first where this came from. Kounin was a researcher, and what he did is he went into schools and he asked the principal to identify the teachers that had the most classroom discipline referrals and the teachers who had the least classroom discipline referrals. So the teachers that, by that measure, were the best at controlling classroom behavior or disruptions, and the teachers that were the worst at identifying classroom disruptions and misbehavior. And so what he did then is he sent in observers, and they went in with no preconceived notion as to what the difference was between those two teachers. They just had them do thousands of hours of observation. And after thousands of hours of observation, Kounin was able to identify certain dimensions that were common to the teachers who did not have a lot of office referrals, but were not common to the teachers who did have a lot of office referrals. So these are not necessarily tricks that you're going to use. These are habits of interaction that you're going to try to cultivate. So the first one that Kounin identified was something that is called with-itness, the idea of having eyes in the back of your head. So with this, what you're saying is that I know what's going on at any given moment in my classroom. I know what's going on, but not only do I know what's going on, but I deal with it. So I know that Sally's back there brushing her hair, and so I say, Sally, put away your brush. If I do that, then I'm going to have more students on task because they know they're being watched. I'm going to have fewer behavior problems, and I'm going to have what's called the positive ripple effect. You know how that works, right? That if you've got one kid who's doing well, behaving well, and you point that out to other kids, then they start behaving well, and it ripples throughout the classroom. The next thing Kounin noted was overlapping, the teacher as a juggler. And so, by the way, these analogies like eyes in the back of your head, teacher as a juggler, that's not in the professional literature, that's Hartley talking. Okay, so overlapping, teacher as the juggler. This means dealing with more than one circumstance at a time. Perfect example here is what elementary teachers do all the time, is that we've got multiple groups going, and so you've got to deal with one thing while you're in the middle of doing something else. And so an example of this would be a 10-second or less correction followed by a return to the subject. So I say, who knows the capital of Utah? And then I go, Billy, the chair should have all four legs on the floor. So, who knows the capital of Utah? It's a quick correction to Billy, but I go on with my teaching as if I expect him to do what I told him to do, because I do, and he knows it. Some of you have had either parents or you've had teachers where you would ask kids, you know, why don't you misbehave around this person when you do around somebody else? And they'll say, we just know not to. This is one of the reasons they know. So again, more students on task, fewer behavior problems, positive ripple effect. Then we've got accountability, the teacher as quality control engineer. This is making the students responsible for their own learning, for their own performance. So you're going to teach self-monitoring and self-assessment. When a kid turns in a paper, you're going to say to them, how do you think you did? Isn't it weird that as a mature learner, when you turn in an assignment, you can pretty well tell me I nailed it, or you can tell me, ooh, I don't think I did so well. You have an internal assessor going on that says, I know how well I did. For a lot of kids with disabilities, or any poor students, they don't know. And so what you start doing is you start asking them, how do you think you did? They say, I don't know. And so you say to them, well, did you answer all the questions? Was your handwriting neat? Did you answer in complete sentences? You start giving them markers that they can use to self-assess how well they're doing on a task. The next one is smoothness and momentum. Teacher as ballerina. Picture yourself as a ballerina on this one. And that is ease and quickness of movement from one topic to another. what we do as teachers, we tend to be high verbal people, and so we tend to bounce from one thing to another. You notice when I do these videos for you that I have my printed material in front of me. I do that so that rather than you seeing my shining face, even though I am gorgeous, the reason I do this is so that I will stay on the subject. So teachers should avoid dangles. That's where you leave a sentence temporarily. So then I talk about truncations. And a truncation is where oh, wait a minute, I need to go back to the oh, that was a flip-flop. You see what I'm doing? I'm demonstrating these things. Ha, 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 ha. Dangles are sentences left temporarily unfinished because you're distracted. Truncation is where you just abandon that sentence completely, never come back to it. A flip-flop is when I go back to a topic after a new topic is introduced. So we're in the middle, we're in math and we're working on word problems, and then I go, oh, wait a minute, y'all, when we were talking earlier about equations, I forgot to tell you that is a flip-flop. Stimulus boundedness is when I stop a lesson to handle something irrelevant. So I'm walking around, I'm talking to the students, and I stop dead in my tracks, and I look down and I go, oh, Julie, I love your new shoes. Where did you get those shoes? And I'm off on a conversation about shoes when we're in the middle of a math lesson. Overdwelling is a mini lecture. Now, the way this works is I turn to, and I'm going to pick on Chelsea on this one. I turn to Chelsea and I say, Chelsea, you need to be quiet. You're talking all the time. You're always talking. Every time I turn around, there's Chelsea talking. She talks first period, she talks second period. Your teacher last year told me that all you ever did was talk. I'm not surprised because I taught your mama. Your mama never could hush. When I do that, when I go off on this mini lecture, the kid hears the first sentence, and then the rest of it is like that voice on the Peanuts cartoon where you're going, wah, 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 wah. So avoid mini lectures. Just say to a kid, Chelsea, need to quit talking. And then move on as if you expect her to do what you told her to do. Fragmentation has to do with oversimplification of directions. The way that works is I say to you, get out your math book, turn to page 64, and do the problems that we talked about earlier. Immediately, the kids are going to be talking among themselves, asking each other, what did she say? I don't understand the directions. And so if instead I give the directions in enough detail that the kids can get it, then I'm going to have fewer behavior management problems. The next one is group alerting, and this is teacher as a conductor. This is keeping the group on their toes while individuals are performing. Getting group attention during group work. So I snap my fingers and say, look up here, and you're all going to look up here. Things like picking on reciters randomly so that they don't know who's going to be called on next. Using verbal alerts. Teacher behavior next is valence. This is teacher as a magnet. You want to attract the attention to you when you're up front and center, and you want to avoid satiation. Satiation is too much of a good thing. So you're going to give systematic positive feedback. You're going to give personal attention. You're going to use humor. By the way, if you don't have a sense of humor, don't try that. You might get hurt. And vary your pace of instruction. Don't use monotone. Don't over-control the situation. And don't do power plays between you and the students. If you find yourself arguing with a student, you disengage immediately. So they say to you, yes, I did. And you say, no, I didn't. No, you didn't. And they say, yes, I did. I did it last time. And you say, no, I remember last time you didn't do it. You hear yourself doing that, and you say, you know something, this is not working. And then you go on with some other technique. Do not stay in the power play. The next one is seat work variety and challenge. And what that means is that you want to use your materials adapted for a variety of learning styles and ability levels. In our next module, when we talk about adaptation of academic skills, then we'll talk about that some more. But things like computer activities, cooperative groups, manipulatives, role plays, simulations, problem solving, different ways to try the same thing. And then the last thing that Kounin talks about is effective transitions. The teacher as a traffic cop. This is the ease of movement from one activity to another. And one of the best ways you can do this is to have routines. that we have a routine for handing in and turning papers. We have a routine for distributing materials, for moving from one part of the room to another, for cleaning up, for asking for help, for leaving the room, where the kids know what the procedure is. They come up to you and they ask you something, and you say, seems to me like what we've talked about is how we do this. You should be able at the end of the class period say to the kids, okay, let's get ready to leave. And they know that means to clean up after their activities, and they know where to put everything and where to put things away. They know before they leave the room that as my dad, who was in the military, would say, you have to police the area, which means pick up around you before you leave. You build those routines in, and then that makes it easier for us to move from one activity to another. Most behavior problems happen during transition as we move from one activity to another activity. Okay, that's a brief and succinct version of Kounin.